If millions of people are using buy now, pay later to buy crazy things like TVs, video games, watches, even burritos at Chipotle, why aren't they using that same exact tactic to buy vending machines? Instead of using creative financing to buy things that lose you money, why not use creative financing to buy things that are gonna make you money? Using creative financing to buy a machine like this can pay you an extra $1,000 to $5,000 a month. Hundreds of profitable routes go up for sale every single year, and you can get a piece of the action for a fraction of the price. Let me show you exactly how you can use buy now, pay later to buy in a cash flowing vending machine business in the next few weeks. When people think about buy now, pay later, they actually have no clue what it means. And the reality of the situation is you're kicking that debt down the road. And the thing about it, you think of some of these tools that use buy now, pay later, they're just trying to get you to action and then make money off the interest of you paying later. And I'm not a big fan of that for things that cost money and then also things that depreciate over time without making you any money. But where I am a big fan of it is when you think about vending machines where you can actually cash flow with using leverage from those pay later options. I mean, think about it. If you go to somewhere like Klarna or any of these other apps and you go to buy something now at any website or any Shopify store, you literally can go and a firm will just have you pay nothing now or minimal down payment and spread out your payment plan over 60 months. So that $100 pair of pants from Lululemon might not cost you anything today, but it's gonna cost you $150 over 24 months. Those type of examples are all buy now, pay later, where I'm not a big fan, but I wanna talk to you about why I am a fan of it in this situation. So the whole point in the psychology of getting the product now and paying later really feeds into the impulse purchase of that pair of Lulu pants without having to have any skin in the game with money to pay for those pants. And this is where, as you can see in today's society, credit card debt is the highest it's ever been. And we're also in a huge deficit as a country. And this is only gonna get worse and worse and worse with the buy now, pay later, because people are kicking the can down the road. And it's the psychology of they just want that pair of Lulu pants because they're comfortable and they want them right now, even though they probably can't afford them if they're using a firm to pay for it. Now, where buy now, pay later can really fit in is those places where you can use leverage right now for cash flowing assets. So think about it. Literally, a mortgage you buy a house with, you're literally deferring that interest over time. But if it's a rental and you're cash flowing every month and you're coming out ahead and not in the red, then you're literally cash flowing. So why wouldn't you get a mortgage to pay off that house? Because it's cash flowing and you're paying it off with the extra cash flow. And so that's where you really got to break out. When you use buy now versus pay later, are you using it for assets that just cost you something and depreciate? Or are you using it for assets that may depreciate, but they're cash flowing for you? The great thing is right now with the unattended revolution is current old school operators, these baby boomers that are in their 70s that built a vending route the old school way through their partnerships with Pepsi and Coke machines are now trying to retire. And as a result, hundreds and hundreds of machines are coming up for sale through these routes that they're trying to sell because these route owners want to retire. And so the beautiful thing with routes these days is there's a lot of them that are going through a revolution between the baby boomers that want to retire, and then you have this new technology that you can use to flip those routes and increase the value from what you purchased it with. And so the beautiful thing is with this whole buy now, pay later is you can leverage good debt to start buying some of these routes. And the best part and the most lucrative thing when you think of vending machines routes is they're so cash flow and so lucrative from a cash flowing perspective that they're just a flywheel and so consistent. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. It doesn't matter what's going on in politics or geopolitics. Literally, people need food and water every single day, and they'll pay for convenience on a marked up product. So the cash flowing ability of a route for sale is very lucrative because it's stable and consistent, which is what you want in any investment. The best part about all these baby boomers that are selling right now is there's an advantage if you want to buy and go super fast versus trying to build from scratch. And like I've touched on, both have both their pros and cons. One, you can go and grow at a slower pace and learn the ropes. The other one, you can literally go buy a route tomorrow that's cash flowing, and you went from 0 to 100 locations just by buying that route, but now you're going 1,000 miles an hour, so you better be ready for what's to come. Where with that other way of building it, it might take a lot longer, but at least you're gonna learn the ropes as you go. So both have pros and cons that you can weigh when you make these decisions. So like a real world example of a route for sale is a route in Chicago right now that's being listed, I think for, the broker said 1.5 million. It's selling for around 1x revenue. And so the great thing is, or even maybe a little less than 1x revenue, I don't remember the exact numbers, but this route is selling for 1.5 million. I think it's got like 77 locations, maybe, probably 90 plus machines. And so you're buying this route that's already cash flowing, already doing 7 figures a year, and already has an operation going, so you can go from 0 to 70 plus locations overnight. And so that's a real world example right now of a route. They're all over the internet right now, these baby boomers that are ready to retire and ready to move on to that next stage of their life. And the thing I love about routes like this example I was talking about with the $1.5 million route for sale right now in Chicago is that I view the revolution of vending and modern vending with AI smart coolers and micro markets as an ability to increase value in that route. So think about it. You buy a route with 70 locations that's doing $1.5 million in revenue. Well, those locations, I bet you, have machines that are old school Pepsi or Coke machines with motors that limit you what you put in those machines. Well, by swapping out that machine at that location with a micro market or a smart cooler, you're now gonna be able to do higher ticket items, incidentals, all these other things that are gonna increase the revenue of that location. And so it's no different than flipping a house. You buy it at a cheaper, lower value to get those locations, then you swap out those machines with new equipment that you can depreciate from a tax benefit perspective. And now your revenue ability is gonna be way more advantageous with smart coolers and micro markets, because at the end of the day, now you can do any item you want in these smart coolers. The great thing when you look at these routes for sale and the whole pay later concept is you have sellers that are willing to finance because they're getting more money than they ever expected or dreamed of anyway. I mean, think about it. You get a vending location that does $2,000 a month. So you go into an urgent care, you pitch them, you put a machine in there, it starts doing $2,000 a month. Well, if you ever wanted to sell that location, you could sell it for around 1x revenue on the yearly revenue. So if you have a $2,000 a month location, you could sell that location for around $24,000. So you'd be ecstatic and you would be open to, hey, if they paid me 10 grand down and paid me the other 14K over time, you're totally fine with it because that's seller financing and you made 10K with just already paying off the machine and your time to get that location. Well, no different than these bigger routes that are being sold. So that, let's say this route in Illinois is selling for $1.5 million, you might offer them, let's say 300 to 500K, like a down payment, no different than a mortgage with a bank when you buy a house. But instead of the mortgage being with the bank, you might actually offer to the owner, hey, I'll actually pay you more than asking price, pay you out over time, and now you're just lowering the capital needed and paying later with the cash flow that you're going to get from that route over time to pay off the seller. And sellers are gonna love that because they might even wanna still be involved a little bit in that route, or they might not wanna be, but they might wanna minimize their tax by spreading it out over a longer period of time so their tax bill is lower over time versus one lump sum they're getting from you. And that's the beauty of seller financing, is it gives you a lot of options on that pay later piece of it to really figure out how to buy this route without being way over your head. An easier way to think about it rather than a mortgage is just think of it as like the seller becoming your bank. So rather than that, you go into the bank to get a loan to pay that seller, you actually want to keep that seller involved a little bit and have skin in the game so they don't just walk away and then all of a sudden you were owner dependent on this business, and now that the owner's gone, your business falls apart. So with seller financing, by actually keeping him involved at least a little bit, you hedge your risk and you can keep him on as the face a little bit to handle these relationship handoffs to you with these locations. So you're literally leveraging the seller as your bank, and he is that financing over time, just like paying a mortgage, you're just paying the seller over time. The biggest thing when you think of seller financing is you got to think of the win-win. So as a buyer, if I go buy that route, let's say in wherever in Ohio, the win for me is getting the route. For the seller, they want stable income over time. And so they might want a lump sum up front, let's say 50% from you, and then they might want that other 50% spread out over time to lower their taxable bill from the sale. And so this is the win-win that's beautiful and the art of the deal. Because when you're focusing on the art of the deal, the beautiful thing is you can create that win-win that aligns with what the seller wants versus also aligns with what you want, which is the route, and marrying those things together and ultimately weighing where you want to go with it. Do you want to pay them out longer over time? Or do you want the lump sum with a clear handoff from the beginning? Or do you want somewhere in the middle? And that's the beauty of the negotiation. And just to bring it back to Klarna or that Chipotle burrito that you might have bought using the Pay Later Klarna app, this is gonna be better for you because you're literally using good debt versus bad debt. So yeah, sure, that Chipotle burrito filled you up, but that's bad debt that you're kicking down the can. Instead of $15 for the burrito, you might pay $20 over the length of 12 months. But the reality is you just lost $5 over time, where with a vending route, if you're using good debt to your advantage, you're actually scaling your route and using the cash flow from that good debt to ultimately keep scaling and keep growing your portfolio by doing things like buying a route. Now that we've actually talked about that real world example in Chicago that I was going through, let's actually get up on the whiteboard and let's actually talk through where you can find routes that are gonna be open to potentially doing seller financing. So the big thing when you're trying to go down this path of seller financing routes for sale, there's definitely different marketplaces you can go to see which routes are for sale. Okay, you're gonna find your traditional marketplaces where routes are gonna be for sale. You know, you think of a place like Biz Buy Sell, that's gonna be any boring business that's for sale, whether that's a vending route, whether that's a bakery route, or just a salon company in your town that's being sold by someone. So you got the common brokers. You got the more modern places like VendHub. So if you go to VendHub to get products, you can also go to VendHub. They have a section where routes are for sale being fed to them by different brokers. And then the third place that you can do is just gonna be rolling up your sleeves and actually reaching out to owners. So if you're someone, let's say you live in Orlando, Florida, and you wanna find out routes for sale, you could actually go to Google Business or Google Maps, type in vending, and just start doing a campaign of outreach, either via email or via cold calling, and just start asking vending owners if they would be interested in selling. And the great thing with that is if you get this, you might actually be able to get a bargain too, because those people that are interested are gonna wanna know, oh, well, maybe I am interested for the right price. And then when you get into that type of conversation, that's really where you start negotiating the win-wins, which I wanna talk about next. So now that you've actually got that operator on the phone and they said, oh, I might be open to selling my route for the right price, that's really when you go into due diligence on, are they open to financing? What are the checklists of my due diligence? And then third thing is, what are the green flags versus what are the red flags? Okay, so when that seller says, hey Mike, I'm in Orlando, I'm really tired, I'm 70, I wanna retire my dad who's 90 and still helping be working in the business a little bit, but he really needs money to live off of as he goes into retirement, that's when you really start to understand, okay, well, if he just needs money to continually live off of, they're probably open to seller financing. And okay, maybe if I'm finding this route in Orlando, Florida, I might not be worried about, okay, if he wants 1.5 million and I think the route's only worth 1.3, I might be comfortable paying 1.5 if I can start shaping the financing in my favor. The other piece of this is you might actually put in a tentative offer and get under LOI, and then start going through your due diligence strategies to start knocking down the price. This is a tactic that's used in real estate investing all of the time. Think about this. Someone offers you 100K for your house and you are having it listed for sale for 80. You say, yes, I'm gonna make 20K extra than I thought I would, so I'm gonna go under contract. Well, guess what they start doing? They start doing due diligence strategies. So you think of due diligence strategies, you start having a CPA review the books, okay? You might do an inspection on the machines. This is all during the LOI process. You know what else you might do? You might also wanna review the contracts they have with properties, okay? Well, all those things during the due diligence process are going to identify cracks in their sale price 9 times out of 10. This is why in real estate, that $100,000 under contract value, they'll get an inspection. The inspector will come in and say, oh, it needs a new roof. There's a leak in the water. There's a crack in the foundation. Well, now, as the buyer, I might get a new roof, I might get new concrete, and I might fix the water leak. Well, all those things just increase the value and also decrease the purchase price. And that's the beauty of what you're trying to do during that due diligence strategies piece of the puzzle. So as you get going on your due diligence, green flags and red flags, some green flags are gonna be things like any ways you can use to your advantage for depreciation. So you think of a CPA reviewing the books, maybe you can depreciate the machines, maybe they have a van they use to drive around and stock the machines, maybe they have a warehouse that's built out with all kinds of storage stuff that can count towards the depreciation. All of that's gonna play into it. The other thing you can do during that due diligence process is maybe they have some broken machines or maybe some machines that have issues with them. Well, you might actually be able to get them to take those machines off the purchase price and you just start nickeling and diming based on the machine issues that are going on. And then the third thing is what you'll find out in the vending industry is it's a very archaic industry. So a lot of these people have machines and properties and they don't even have contracts. So you can actually use that to devalue the value of that location because there's no contract. Literally, it's a handshake agreement. Let's say that route's being sold and the location has a value at an urgent care of 20 grand a year because it's doing around $1,500 a month. Well, if they don't have a contract, that value of 20 grand might actually be only 15. So you just start knocking off through your due diligence checklist all these things that you want to negotiate on because you're already under contract with them. And that is going to ultimately do the due diligence for you. The big thing after you've done your due diligence is now trying to shape something that's going to be a win-win for everybody, because you don't want to screw over the seller and lowball them through ultimately knocking off all these values, and then they're not going to be motivated to help with a smooth transition, because you ultimately want a smooth transition. Is the big focus you want to focus on is a win-win for each of you. So let's keep using that Orlando example that we pulled off from Google Maps, and let's try to understand the win-win. Okay, so let's say this Orlando seller wants $1 million for a route. Easy math, okay? The great thing is, let's say he's a 60-year-old that's selling because he wants to retire his 80-year-old dad, okay? So he's selling because he wants to retire his 80-year-old dad. His dad has a stake in the route financially, and he wants to get his dad a payout so that his dad can go off into the sunset and fully retire. But the son, that's 60 years old, actually wouldn't mind sticking around and working a little bit. And you might actually want that, because if you want the route to be passive for you and you want them to still be the operators and you're just the visionary, that might work in your favor. Yeah, so the win-win in this case, the win for us is we get the route and we actually get an operator, the son, to run it. The win for them is they might get their purchase price from us, but we're only gonna put a set amount down that's gonna align with how much equity the dad had in the company to actually get him paid to retire. So think about this. Say this guy, the dad, owns 50% of the company. Okay, say the son owns the other 50%. Well, to get this guy to retire, he might want 500K, and then we do the other 500K over 60 months. And the great thing with that is you break that out over 60 months. If this route's doing $1 million and our payment of 500K over 60 months is only, I don't know what that comes out to be, 10 or 11K a month maybe? I'm not really good at math, so don't quote me on it. But the great thing is we're literally paying this over time for a route that's doing $1 million a year. which is gonna be $84,000 a month. So you see how we're using the cash flow, keeping our relationships, getting them the money they need up front to ultimately leverage what we want, which is gonna be keeping the sun around so we don't lose any locations and any owner dependencies when we buy the route, and then weighing them out over time. All right, so now that you might be thinking, well, that was a great hypothetical, but how does this work in real life? Well, I actually bought a route last year, and I'm gonna dive in to how we bought it for a great margin and also how we scaled it for a great return on our investment. Okay, so there was a route that we bought last year for 96K, okay? That route was doing 8K a month in revenue, all right? I knew by talking to the seller that he needed to move back home and he really wanted half of the money up front to give him around 50K to get all his stuff back home and also move and also do a deposit on a new place back home. So I knew the seller wanted to do around half of this, so he would be comfortable with 48K down. He also hinted, I'm fine with doing 48K paid out over 48 months. And he even said, I'm open to a 3% interest rate, which is mind blowing because guess what? If you go get a mortgage right now, your interest rates are anywhere from 7 to 9% because they just keep going up. So locking him in on that was fantastic. This is back to what I talked about earlier, which is using the seller as your bank, okay? And so with that, when you think about 96K asking price, I was comfortable with that because the things I really wanted was a lower down payment, and I also wanted him, this 8K a month was 4 locations with new equipment. So I knew I could depreciate the new equipment from a tax perspective, but also I wanted him involved for at least a year to hand off those 4 locations to me without ruffling any feathers with the location decision makers. So for the first 3 months before he moved back home, I had him take me an intro to each decision maker as his business partner. And so it was a smooth transition. During that, I was able to pay 48K down. Then I was able to also pay $1,000 a month, which I'm still paying because I'm in no rush. It's $1,000 a month at 3%. I'm in no rush. Let's just round that up 3%. I'm paying $1,030 or $1,000, whatever it comes out to be. No rush to pay it off earlier. The other great thing is now that I've found these 4 locations and got intros to the decision makers, I've already scaled that by asking for intros to their sister properties and adding new machines. So a couple of his locations didn't have freezers. So we just did a value add play like flipping the house where we just added freezers, which increased the revenue. Get this, I bought this route in May of 2024, literally 1 year ago. Guess what it just did? Literally just did May 2025. It just hit 84K a month in a year. That's a 10X increase. Now, if I want to do the same thing, let's say, oh, I'm tired of the route, I'm good, I want to, retire my dad someday. I could sell this same thing for a 1X multiple on 84K a month, $1 million. This is all about leverage and using that to create a win-win with seller financing. Get it now, pay it later, just like an investment property. If you'd like to learn more about how I've built a 7-figure vending machine business in just a few years with leveraging other people's money, check out the free course on my channel. This is a full step-by-step guide on how to start a profitable vending machine business for free. So go check that out somewhere in the link around this video. Thanks for watching. Mr. Passive signing off.